On July 12, 2025, a breaking news flash jolted Beirut's midnight silence. Hassan Nasrallah, the elusive Secretary General of Hezbollah, was reportedly dead. The announcement rippled across Lebanese airwaves, sparking disbelief, hysteria, and questions that would quickly spiral beyond national borders. The scene outside Hezbollah's headquarters was one of chaos. Supporters wept openly, television crews jostled for angles, and armed men fired bullets skyward in grief. The capital felt suspended in shock, as though history itself had stopped breathing momentarily. Reports conflicted. Some claimed natural causes, others whispered poison. A few dared to suggest precision strike technology, cloaked in plausible deniability, but nothing was certain. Only one fact was clear. The man untouchable for decades was suddenly gone. Western embassies immediately fortified their compounds. Israeli media outlets remained cryptically silent. Crowds swelled through the streets of Dahieh, Hezbollah's southern stronghold, holding torches, chanting defiance. This was no ordinary death. It was the ignition spark of something larger, something unstoppable. Journalists replayed Nasrallah's final broadcast, aired just hours before his death. His voice had been steady, his rhetoric unshaken. There were no hints of fragility, no forewarning of imminent collapse. Then, as though scripted, the curtain fell dramatically. The Lebanese government issued a statement of national tragedy, though officials looked shaken, almost cornered. Intelligence analysts worldwide scrambled to assess consequences. Was this merely a biological inevitability, or was it the hand of Mossad? The distinction meant war or something far worse. The implications were seismic. For decades, Hassan Nasrallah had been the architect of Hezbollah's endurance, the living symbol of defiance against Israel, America, and Western influence. His death represented more than the end of a man. It represented destabilized equilibrium. For Israel, the timing was uncanny. Northern borders had been tense, rocket exchanges common, but a fragile restraint endured. With Nasrallah gone, would Hezbollah fracture? Or would his successors unleash uncontrollable fury? The uncertainty electrified military and diplomatic circles alike. Washington held emergency meetings. European capitals braced for retaliatory plots. Tehran, Hezbollah's patron and benefactor, publicly mourned while privately calculating. The balance of the Middle East often depended on one man's survival. His sudden absence created dangerous opportunity and risk. Markets trembled, oil futures spiked, and regional leaders scrambled. Could this death topple Lebanon further into collapse? Could it provoke a miscalculation that ignites a regional war? In every intelligence agency war room, maps of Lebanon glowed crimson. The stakes transcended Lebanon's borders. Hezbollah's influence stretched from Syria's battlefields to Yemen's smuggling routes, from clandestine fundraising in Africa to shadow networks in South America. Removing its leader without collapse could mean a triumph of intelligence precision, or a Pandora's box unleashed. Who orchestrated this? Was it the hidden hand of Mossad, long obsessed with silencing its most formidable adversary? Or was it an internal betrayal, masked carefully to fracture Hezbollah from within? The mystery deepened with every unanswered whisper across Beirut. Why now? Had Nasrallah's influence grown intolerable? Did Israel fear his ability to mobilize allies for another war? Or did unseen global players engineer this removal to redraw boundaries of power in the Middle East, exploiting chaos for advantage? Could advanced poisons have mimicked natural death, leaving doctors bewildered? Did shadow operatives slip across Beirut under false passports, their movements invisible except to classified files? Or was the entire spectacle a stage-managed deception, concealing him in preparation for future wars? And the haunting question that consumed intelligence services: what happens next? Would Hezbollah's leadership splinter, spawning rival factions thirsting for vengeance? Or would a successor emerge, more ruthless, less predictable? The assassination, if assassination it was, became a fuse to history's powder keg. Hassan Nasrallah was born on August 31, 1960, in Burj Hammoud, a crowded district of East Beirut. His family, modest and devoutly Shia, struggled against the turbulence of Lebanon's fractured politics, where poverty and sectarian divides dictated nearly every opportunity available. His father, Abdul Karim, ran a small fruit and vegetable stand. His mother, Hassan, was remembered as deeply religious and protective. Together they raised 9 children in cramped quarters, where responsibility pressed down early on Hassan's young shoulders. Life was marked by survival. Electricity outages were frequent, shelling sometimes audible from nearby conflicts. Streets were arenas of sectarian tension, and Hassan, curious and bookish, absorbed political conversations whispered by elders over tea, shaping his awareness of identity and struggle. At school, teachers noted his seriousness. He rarely joked, rarely played. Instead, he devoured religious texts, memorized sermons, and spoke with conviction that startled adults. His classmates saw him less as peer and more as a figure destined for greater significance. The 1970s reshaped him profoundly. Israel's growing presence in Lebanon, the civil war's eruption, and the plight of Shiite communities underrepresented politically and economically carved deep impressions. Nasrallah internalized injustice as destiny, carrying it like scripture etched into marrow. When Israeli forces raided southern Lebanon in 1978, Hassan, only 18, witnessed devastation firsthand. Villages leveled, families displaced, grief tangible in every direction. It was not abstract geopolitics, it was his people. This crucible hardened him, turning empathy into ideological steel overnight. The clerics of Najaf, Iraq, became his intellectual North Star. During brief studies there, he encountered the writings of Ayatollah Khomeini. For Nasrallah, faith and politics fused seamlessly. Religion was not simply private devotion, but blueprint for collective liberation. Returning to Lebanon, he carried both humility and fire. Humility in his simple clothes, his quiet presence. Fire in his uncompromising belief that Shiite communities deserved dignity, power, and sovereignty. This was not yet the militant commander, only the seed was planted. Nasrallah's ideology was forged in fire and scripture. He embraced the revolutionary Shia philosophy of Ayatollah Khomeini, viewing resistance not only as political necessity, but divine mandate. Israel was more than an adversary. It was existential threat framed in apocalyptic spiritual dimensions. Yet behind the fiery rhetoric stood surprising modesty. Nasrallah lived without luxury, preferring simple meals and unadorned rooms. He cultivated image of ascetic leader, immune to corruption. Followers interpreted this not as affectation, but as authenticity, deepening his mythic authority. His speeches became legendary. Fluent in Arabic's poetic cadences, he wielded metaphor like weapon, combining scripture with strategy. Crowds hung on every phrase, seeing him not just as politician but as preacher, father, warrior, and oracle rolled seamlessly into one. Quirks reinforced his mystique. He was meticulous about timing, notorious for starting speeches exactly when promised. He rarely appeared in public, favoring hidden bunkers, connected through screens. This absence of physical presence only magnified aura. Nasrallah was seen everywhere but touched nowhere. Even his enemies admitted his charisma. Journalists who interviewed him remarked on his piercing gaze, his ability to dominate without raising voice. His ideological rigidity masked shrewd pragmatism. He knew when to compromise, when to escalate, and when silence spoke volumes. To admirers, he was Sayyid Hassan, a respectful title linking him to the Prophet's lineage, granting spiritual legitimacy. Hezbollah's media machine amplified this lineage constantly, framing him as not merely a politician, but a divinely sanctioned shepherd of Lebanon's marginalized Shia community. Enemies branded him the Spider of Beirut, weaving webs of militancy from unseen corners, impossible to strike directly. Israelis considered him master of survival, appearing only through recorded addresses, vanishing before precision strikes. Myth and menace fused seamlessly in reputation. Nasrallah's self-image leaned toward martyrdom. He often declared desire to die on battlefield, not in bed, invoking religious poetry of sacrifice. Yet his cautious behavior, perpetual bunkering, and reliance on secrecy suggested duality between personal faith and political calculation. Children in southern Lebanon memorized songs calling him the Protector, while Western analysts noted his eerie calm under pressure. His nicknames functioned less as labels than mirrors. each reflecting how different worlds interpreted his shadowed figure, never fully revealing man beneath. By the late 1970s, Lebanon's civil war raged like wildfire, consuming sects and neighborhoods indiscriminately. For young Hassan, ideological conviction demanded action. He gravitated toward Amal movement, the Shia militia offering structure, protection, and sense of empowerment for Lebanon's marginalized southern communities. Though Amal provided military training, Nasrallah quickly found it ideologically insufficient. Amal prioritized political negotiation. Hassan hungered for absolute resistance. Iranian revolutionaries, flush with zeal after 1979, courted disillusioned Amal members. It was here seeds of Hezbollah's creation began germinating. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon, citing Palestinian threats. The invasion became Nasrallah's crucible. He shifted decisively, joining Hezbollah's embryonic cells, supported by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. These groups fused theology, guerrilla warfare, and community welfare, presenting vision that outflanked Amal's limited pragmatism. Nasrallah's early role was that of field organizer. He commanded small units, oversaw clandestine training, and preached resistance in makeshift mosques. His combination of charisma and discipline elevated him rapidly, transforming him from religious student into tactician whose name spread among Lebanon's embattled Shia. By mid-1980s, he was no longer a follower, but a rising architect. Political rhetoric and battlefield coordination merged seamlessly under his guidance. His destiny was sealed. The pulpit and the rifle would henceforth remain inseparable instruments of his authority. Lebanon's civil war, erupting in 1975, was not a singular conflict, but a kaleidoscope of sectarian militias, foreign patrons, and shifting alliances. Christians, Sunnis, Shias, Palestinians, each armed, each backed by external powers. Into this fractured landscape, Hezbollah emerged as disruptive force. Israel's invasions in 1978 and 1982 transformed Lebanon into front line. The stated mission was dismantling Palestinian bases, yet civilian devastation radicalized many Lebanese. Shia villagers, neglected by Beirut's elites, became Hezbollah's natural recruits, fusing religious conviction with pragmatic need for protection. Meanwhile, Iran exported its revolution through ideological networks and military advisors. The Revolutionary Guards established presence in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, teaching guerrilla tactics, embedding Khomeini's vision. Hezbollah became not only local militia, but projection of Iran's revolutionary aspirations across Levant. Syria, always pursuing dominance in Lebanon, both tolerated and manipulated Hezbollah. Damascus sought to weaponize Hezbollah against Israel, while simultaneously restraining it to maintain leverage. Thus, Hezbollah became entangled in layers of proxy struggles, its survival dependent on balancing multiple foreign patrons. The conflict's broader scope extended beyond Lebanon's borders. Israeli forces clashed with Hezbollah guerrillas in southern Lebanon for decades, producing asymmetric war. Each ambush, bombing, or kidnapping amplified Hezbollah's stature, eroding Israel's deterrence. By 2000, Israel withdrew, declaring mission complete, yet Hezbollah claimed victory. Sectarian divides amplified the stakes. Sunnis viewed Hezbollah's Shia identity with suspicion. Christians oscillated between fear and reluctant accommodation. Palestinians alternately allied or clashed. What seemed local was in fact global. Microcosm of the Middle East's eternal struggle between identity, ideology, and control. Iran stood as Hezbollah's undisputed patron. Financing, training, weapons, all flowed from Tehran. For Iran, Hezbollah was forward operating arm, projecting power onto Israel's doorstep. Beyond battlefield, Hezbollah also carried Iranian ideology, exporting vision of resistance that transcended Lebanon's fragile, faction-ridden political system. Syria's position was more transactional. Damascus leveraged Hezbollah as bargaining chip, ensuring it could pressure Israel while retaining veto power over Lebanese politics. At times protector, at times manipulator, Syria's relationship was pragmatic dance, both enabling and constraining Hezbollah's rise. Israel's stance was existential. Hezbollah represented not merely hostile militia, but ideological nemesis, sworn to dismantle Jewish state. From border skirmishes to rocket barrages, Hezbollah became Israel's obsession. Every military doctrine, every intelligence assessment, placed Nasrallah at center of strategic threat matrix. The United States designated Hezbollah as terrorist organization, seeing it as Iranian proxy undermining Western interests. Washington imposed sanctions, pressured allies, and armed Israel. Yet American policymakers faced paradox. Hezbollah was terrorist group, but also political party deeply embedded in Lebanon's governance. Europe was divided. Britain proscribed Hezbollah's military wing, while distinguishing its political branch. France, with historical ties to Lebanon, pursued cautious diplomacy. Meanwhile, Hezbollah maintained networks across European cities, raising funds, recruiting quietly, exploiting diaspora's connections while dodging intelligence surveillance. The Arab world fractured in response. Gulf monarchies condemned Hezbollah, aligning against Iranian expansion. Yet populations in Egypt, Jordan, and beyond admired Nasrallah's defiance of Israel. The contradiction was stark. State policies often hostile, but street-level sympathy surprisingly resilient. Hassan Nasrallah mattered because he was more than figurehead. He embodied Hezbollah's survival strategy, part cleric, part general, part media strategist. In a region where leaders often appeared corrupt or aloof, Nasrallah projected discipline, humility, and clarity of ideological conviction. He mattered to Iran because he transformed abstract revolutionary rhetoric into battlefield results. Through him, Tehran's slogans against Israel materialized as rockets, ambushes, and televised defiance. He was bridge between Qom's theology and Lebanon's guerrilla trenches, giving Iran tangible regional leverage. For Israel, Nasrallah symbolized humiliation. When Israel withdrew from Lebanon in 2000 under Hezbollah's relentless pressure, Nasrallah declared victory. His speeches haunted Israeli policymakers, who saw him as embodiment of deterrence failure, charismatic adversary capable of rallying entire populations against them. He mattered globally because he blurred boundaries between militia and state. Hezbollah operated hospitals, schools, and charities, elevating his stature beyond warlord. In Lebanese politics, his influence rivaled presidents and prime ministers, proving insurgency could evolve into institution without shedding ideological militancy. Western intelligence agencies studied him obsessively. His decision-making was calculated, his rhetoric timed to markets, wars, and elections. He was simultaneously terrorist and statesman, paradox that confounded traditional categories. His survival became proxy measurement of Hezbollah's resilience and Iran's reach. Ultimately, Nasrallah mattered because he embodied unresolved contradictions of the Middle East: pious yet pragmatic, militant yet political, local yet global. His existence illustrated enduring question: could movements born of war transform into governance, or were they forever prisoners of militancy? Nasrallah's early years in militancy coincided with Lebanon's descent into chaos. Local skirmishes with rival factions hardened his resolve. In these formative battles, he learned asymmetry. Hezbollah's strength lay not in numbers, but in striking unpredictably, melting back into neighborhoods, denying accountability. Initial reports linked him to clandestine weapons smuggling. Small arms moved from Bekaa Valley to Beirut under his supervision. While not yet supreme leader, he proved organizational instincts. Lebanese authorities attempted surveillance, yet Hezbollah's underground networks consistently outmaneuvered fragile state apparatus. In mid-1980s, Amal Hezbollah clashes erupted. Nasrallah, commanding smaller units, faced accusations of kidnappings and street violence. Western journalists speculated on his involvement in hostage operations targeting foreigners, though hard evidence remained elusive. Arrests of subordinates occurred. Nasrallah himself evaded detention through sheer caution. Israeli intelligence monitored him early. In 1987, a raid in southern Lebanon uncovered documents linking his faction to cross-border operations. Though Nasrallah's name surfaced, he stayed steps ahead, never physically present. His capacity to inspire without exposure frustrated opponents and fed his legend. Lebanese police occasionally detained Hezbollah sympathizers in crackdowns, but Nasrallah remained untouched. His anonymity in these years was protective armor. To his supporters, arrests were badges of honor, proof of resistance. To adversaries, absence of his capture symbolized dangerous cunning. Though Nasrallah himself avoided long imprisonment, stories of comrades' detentions shaped his worldview. Captured Hezbollah fighters described Israeli interrogation cells in Qiyam, notorious for electric shocks, beatings, and psychological torment. These testimonies circulated widely, becoming fuel for collective memory of resistance. Nasrallah wove these narratives into sermons, transforming private suffering into political capital. He presented every scar as scripture, every confession extracted under duress as proof of Israeli brutality. Prison became mythological forge, where ordinary Shia youths were baptized into unbreakable warriors. Even when skeptics questioned exaggerations, imagery endured. Torture claims validated Hezbollah's armed struggle, providing justification for escalation. For Nasrallah, prison represented invisible battlefield. Though walls held men captive, ideology slipped through bars, recruiting sympathizers faster than enemies could suppress them. Thus, detention stories became foundation stones of Hezbollah's moral architecture. Nasrallah never wore prisoners' uniform, but he wielded survivors' testimonies like weapons. Each whispered account reinforced necessity of clandestine struggle, and in doing so burnished his authority as leader shaping destiny beyond confinement. After breaking from Amal, Nasrallah gravitated toward Hezbollah's embryonic nucleus, forming within mosques, safe houses, and training camps. Iranian Revolutionary Guard advisors mentored these cells, teaching guerrilla tactics. Nasrallah absorbed both theology and warfare, blending scripture with strategy until the lines vanished entirely. He formally joined Hezbollah's military apparatus in early 1980s, commanding units in southern Lebanon. Here, discipline and charisma elevated him rapidly. His ability to communicate vision, while enforcing strict order, distinguished him from militia leaders fueled solely by rage. The founding of Hezbollah was not a single event, but gradual coalescence. Small militant circles, Shia clerics, Iranian advisors, each contributed. Nasrallah's early role focused on cohesion, transforming fragmented groups into unified front under banners of resistance, martyrdom, and divine legitimacy. He proved indispensable as recruiter. Young men, weary of occupation and poverty, were drawn by his fiery sermons. He offered not just weapons, but dignity, narrative that their deaths could shape history. This religiously infused mobilization became Hezbollah's greatest long-term strategic advantage. By late 1980s, Hezbollah was undeniable force. Nasrallah's fingerprints lay across its structure: welfare services, propaganda networks, disciplined fighters. He was not yet supreme commander, but trajectory was unmistakable. Every path led him closer to helm of revolutionary movement. As Hezbollah matured, its tactics escalated. Nasrallah's cadres orchestrated arms smuggling routes through Syria, shipping weapons concealed in convoys labeled humanitarian aid. Each shipment strengthened militia capabilities, while exposing Lebanon further to regional proxy wars where civilians became collateral with alarming regularity. Kidnappings became signature leverage. Western hostages disappeared in Beirut during 1980s, snatched by Hezbollah-linked cells. Ransoms, prisoner exchanges, and political concessions followed. While Nasrallah denied direct orchestration, intelligence sources consistently linked his units to intricate networks sustaining hostage economy. Killings carried unmistakable symbolism. Attacks on Israeli patrols in southern Lebanon grew bolder, utilizing roadside bombs and ambushes. Each strike filmed, each image broadcasted, amplifying message of resistance. Bloodshed was not random. It was narrative tool, scripted for both regional and global audiences. Drug trafficking allegations emerged. Hezbollah operatives were accused of financing operations through narcotics smuggling across Bekaa Valley. Whether myth or reality, such claims underscored organization's adaptability. Nasrallah's ideological sermons were paired with pragmatic survival mechanisms, fusing sanctity of resistance with shadows of crime. Escalation cemented Hezbollah's reputation. Smuggling sustained them. Kidnappings terrified adversaries. Killings cemented deterrence. Through all, Nasrallah cultivated aura of righteous insurgent, cloaking brutality in theological justification. The world saw dual figure, militant cleric waging holy war, and strategist manipulating chaos deliberately. On April 18, 1983, Hezbollah operatives executed car bombing of U.S. Embassy in Beirut, killing 63, including CIA officers. Nasrallah, though not primary architect, emerged within leadership circles advocating escalation. Attacks signaled Hezbollah's arrival on global stage, ruthless, calculated, and ideologically uncompromising. 6 months later, October 23, 1983, twin truck bombs destroyed U.S. Marine barracks and French paratrooper compound, killing 299 servicemen. Intelligence linked planning to Hezbollah factions supported by Iran. Nasrallah's influence expanded as resistance theology fused seamlessly with spectacular, headline-dominating violence. In 1985, Hezbollah hijacked TWA Flight 847. Passengers endured days of terror, and one U.S. Navy diver was executed. While Nasrallah remained in Lebanon, Western intelligence placed him among strategists endorsing internationalization of conflict, transforming Lebanon's battlefields into global political chessboard. Throughout late 1980s, targeted kidnappings of Western journalists, teachers, and aid workers became routine. Victims were shuffled through Beirut's safe houses, hidden from counterintelligence. These operations, attributed to Hezbollah units, reinforced perception of Nasrallah as shadow conductor orchestrating Lebanon's descent into hostage capital. By 1992, assassinations entered narrative. Israeli-backed figures in Lebanon were eliminated, sending chilling warnings. That same year, Hezbollah's Secretary General Abbas al-Musawi was killed in Israeli airstrike. Nasrallah inherited leadership mantle, his trajectory now irreversible, his name cemented as central adversary in regional struggle. By early 1990s, Nasrallah was no longer obscure cleric but internationally recognized threat. Israel formally designated him primary target after inheriting Hezbollah's leadership. His name appeared on intelligence dossiers marked Priority Level 1, alongside warnings that elimination required precision, patience, and absolute deniability. Washington soon followed. The United States branded Hezbollah terrorist organization in 1997, placing Nasrallah under sanctions. His movements, finances, and communications became subjects of relentless monitoring. He was described in CIA cables as orchestrator of asymmetric warfare, combining ideological rigidity with strategic genius. Interpol issued notices targeting Hezbollah operatives linked to international plots. Though Nasrallah himself rarely traveled, his influence extended across continents. European and Latin American investigators traced fundraising and smuggling rings back to his networks. The man confined to bunkers projected shadow worldwide. In Tel Aviv, military planners viewed Nasrallah as singular adversary capable of rallying Shia militias regionally. His survival after Musawi's assassination was seen as intelligence failure, motivating obsession. Israeli generals declared him living symbol of resistance, whose continued presence represented intolerable psychological and strategic defeat. The label Most Wanted carried weight. Every broadcast, every fiery speech further justified designations. Yet paradox emerged. Eliminating him risked martyrdom effect, potentially destabilizing region further. Thus, his listing was both declaration of intent and confession of hesitancy, a chess match frozen mid-move. Nasrallah embraced notoriety. He spoke publicly of enemies' obsession, framing their pursuit as validation of righteousness. His image circulated in posters, murals, and chants. To supporters, wanted posters were badges of honor. To adversaries, they symbolized frustrating truth. He remained untouchable. Israel's first serious attempt came in 1997, when commandos launched raid in southern Lebanon targeting senior Hezbollah figures. Nasrallah narrowly evaded trap, thanks to intercepted communications. The mission collapsed disastrously, leaving 12 Israeli soldiers dead, deepening his myth as untouchable adversary defying overwhelming technological superiority. In 1999, reports surfaced of poisoned envelopes intercepted by Hezbollah's security wing. Intelligence leaks suggested Mossad experiment with biological toxins designed to mimic illness. No official confirmation emerged, but paranoia deepened. Every meal, letter, or handshake could conceal lethal surprise. The 2006 Lebanon War intensified efforts. Israeli aircraft bombarded Dahieh district, leveling Hezbollah's headquarters. Rumors circulated that Nasrallah was trapped beneath rubble. Yet days later, his broadcast appeared, calm, unshaken, mocking Israel's inability to strike decisively. Survival transformed him into enduring symbol of resistance. Drone warfare became new frontier. Hezbollah claimed in 2008 to have downed Israeli UAV allegedly tracking Nasrallah's convoy. Lebanese media speculated he frequently changed cars, routes, and disguises. The dance between hunter and hunted escalated, every flight overhead a reminder of omnipresent threat. Plots reportedly extended abroad. Intelligence whispers described surveillance of Hezbollah-linked compounds in Syria and speculation of ambushes coordinated with defectors. Each attempt, foiled or aborted, expanded aura of inevitability. Enemies admitted Nasrallah's elimination was question of timing, not possibility. He himself acknowledged danger, declaring, "I live target every day." His bunker existence became public knowledge, reinforcing mystique. Each failed assassination amplified both fear and respect, making his continued survival unbearable for adversaries and miraculous for followers seeking divine confirmation. Every intelligence estimate carried same haunting phrase: Nasrallah's elimination is inevitable. Analysts across Tel Aviv, Washington, and Riyadh described him as walking dead man, protected by bunkers, yes, but stalked relentlessly by satellites, drones, moles, and covert teams practicing patience measured in decades. The logic was undeniable. Few leaders survive perpetual designation as top target. Mossad's archives brimmed with successful operations, car bombs, poison pens, exploding phones. Inevitability was not prophecy, but precedent. History suggested no adversary could outlast Israel's relentless intelligence machine indefinitely. Supporters, however, inverted narrative. Each survival was divine miracle, proof that God shielded him. The more enemies promised inevitable death, the more his survival transformed into theological affirmation. Yet myth could not suspend reality forever. Every bunker has cracks, every network leaks. Thus tension built, like tightening noose. Was Nasrallah destined for sudden fiery strike, a shadowy poisoning, or staged accident? Inevitability became background music of his life, crescendoing with time. The question was no longer if, but when and how. In early autumn of 2024, quiet flights touched down at Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport. On the passenger manifests appeared nothing remarkable: businessmen, consultants, humanitarian workers. Yet behind the forged passports and carefully chosen aliases lurked Mossad operatives, each carrying a fragment of the mission. They moved with the precision of orchestra players, each note rehearsed, every silence intentional. Their bags contained not weapons, but innocuous objects concealing specialized tools. Fiber cameras hidden in phone chargers, lockpicks disguised as pen caps, and encrypted communication devices slim enough to vanish into wallets. These agents were ghosts among the living, trained to blend into crowds without leaving impressions. Some checked into coastal resorts as European tourists escaping autumn chills. Others posed as NGO researchers compiling reports on reconstruction. Their accents had been drilled for years, their mannerisms calibrated to mimic authenticity. Mossad handlers in Tel Aviv monitored their progress, speaking in curt bursts of code, ensuring that each operative's cover story held against scrutiny. One operative arrived under the identity of a German systems engineer, another as a Canadian energy consultant. Each alias was a shield, but also a weapon. The network was designed to overlap subtly. One consultant might casually greet another tourist at a cafe, never acknowledging their shared allegiance, but signaling readiness through a microgesture rehearsed countless times. This convergence was not coincidence, but choreography. The operation was codenamed Silent Cedars, chosen to evoke Lebanon's national symbol, while foreshadowing its silence after the strike. Weeks of patient embedding lay ahead. The operatives were not hunting with rifles in the streets, but with patience in hotel rooms, waiting for Nasrallah to surface from his labyrinth of safe houses. The hunt had begun, yet the prey remained unaware that the shadows had already thickened around him. The city's hotels became temporary headquarters, each chosen for vantage points rather than luxury. A mid-range business hotel overlooking a busy roundabout became the nerve center. Two operatives checked in under separate names, requesting opposite-facing rooms. One room served as observation post with a disguised long-lens camera hidden behind blackout curtains. The other stored electronics capable of intercepting nearby mobile signals. Guests walked past the operatives daily, never realizing that intelligence was being siphoned from the air around them. Elsewhere, a boutique hotel in Hamra hosted a pair of archaeologists, supposedly mapping Phoenician ruins. In truth, they mapped Nasrallah's convoy routes, identifying choke points and patterns. Every check-in was a calculated placement, like pieces in a chess game. Hotel staff remembered them as polite, unremarkable, even forgettable. That was the goal. Surveillance extended beyond physical spaces. Operatives used rental cars equipped with inconspicuous dash cameras, blending into Beirut's chaotic traffic. Drones disguised as hobbyist toys hovered from balconies at night, their quiet buzzing masked by city noise. Every angle was covered. Satellite imagery from Langley traded in discreet packets with Mossad's headquarters, while agents on the ground verified details with human eyes. The team did not seek Nasrallah directly. They sought the ripples around him. Who carried his messages? Which bodyguards lingered too long at the same tea shop? Which cleric's sudden disappearance signaled movement inside Hezbollah's hierarchy? Surveillance became less about looking and more about listening to silence, to absence, to shifts invisible to outsiders. Each day's intelligence was logged, encrypted, and transmitted back to Tel Aviv in bursts lasting mere seconds. In the controlled chaos of hotel lobbies, Mossad created a hidden web. From these ordinary rooms, extraordinary precision began tightening the noose around the most elusive man in Lebanon. The morning of the operation unfolded with deceptive normalcy. Streets of Beirut echoed with the usual symphony of honking horns, vendors shouting, and the heavy perfume of diesel fumes. Yet for the Mossad operatives, every second ticked with unbearable weight. They had mapped this day for months, running simulations in Tel Aviv and reenacting Nasrallah's possible routes through mock neighborhoods built on desert soil. Now, the script was no longer rehearsal. It was performance. At dawn, an operative posing as a Canadian journalist checked messages on a laptop in the hotel cafe. Hidden beneath ordinary emails was the confirmation. Target would appear later that evening. The message vanished seconds after being read, leaving no trace on the device. Across town, another operative bought fresh bread from a bakery. His bag concealed not food, but a disguised transmitter capable of relaying coded signals to team members already stationed near Nasrallah's suspected location. By mid-afternoon, tension tightened. Convoys were tracked weaving through Dahieh, Hezbollah's stronghold. The agents knew Nasrallah rarely exposed himself in daylight, preferring to appear only after darkness fell. Mossad surveillance units noted subtle increases in bodyguard presence near a modest residential block. They did not need confirmation. The shift alone was enough. The city itself seemed to hold its breath. As night draped Beirut in neon and shadows, operatives took positions. A decoy vehicle blocked a side street, its driver pretending to wrestle with a flat tire. Another agent strolled nearby, disguised as a European tourist photographing graffiti. Both carried concealed micro-cameras feeding live video into a secure channel. Hotel rooms transformed into control centers hummed with activity, every operative linked by encrypted comms. At 9:47 p.m., the decisive moment arrived. Nasrallah entered the targeted building under a veil of bodyguards. A silent signal passed through Mossad's web. Green light. Inside their rooms, operatives synchronized watches. On rooftops and in alleys, shadows shifted as chess pieces slid into place. The culmination of years of planning had narrowed into a window no longer than a breath. For the operatives, every detail mattered. The creak of a stair, the hum of an elevator, the flicker of a street lamp. Beirut, oblivious to its own stage, became the theater of an invisible war. The methods employed that night were not weapons of brute force, but instruments of precision. Mossad's arsenal was designed to slip beneath detection, to whisper rather than roar. Locks that once protected Nasrallah's sanctuaries yielded silently to custom-fabricated picks engineered in Tel Aviv's clandestine workshops. Each pick was disguised as an ordinary keychain trinket, innocuous under casual inspection. Electronic surveillance became the real spear. Miniature transmitters, no larger than shirt buttons, were planted within stairwells and entryways days earlier by operatives disguised as maintenance staff. These devices transmitted real-time audio to nearby vans fitted with concealed antennae. No burst of static betrayed their presence, only seamless streams of intelligence guiding the operation forward. Poisons, though prepared, were held as last resort. Among them was a fast-acting neurotoxin concealed inside a marker pen, capable of being deployed in a handshake or a quick brush. Yet Mossad preferred technology over chemistry. Fiber optic cameras were threaded beneath doors, relaying grainy but vital images. With these, the team could track Nasrallah's position without ever stepping into his line of sight. Communications relied on encrypted bursts that traveled through disguised consumer devices. A smartphone casually left on a cafe table was in fact a hub for encrypted relays. Each agent carried a silent vibrating band around the wrist, pulsing in coded sequences to convey instructions without a spoken word. Even the exit strategy was layered with deception. Vehicles were equipped with plates that could flip, changing registration numbers in seconds. Passports contained embedded microchips carrying false biometric data, ensuring survival if anyone was detained. Every tool, every trick was calibrated for the illusion of normalcy. In the end, Mossad's true weapon was invisibility, turning the city itself into an accomplice, where nothing seemed out of place until it was far too late. The night carried an electricity that felt almost cinematic. In one corridor, an operative disguised as a businessman froze as a Hezbollah guard passed within arm's reach. The guard's eyes swept lazily over him, lingered for a breath, then moved on. A bead of sweat slid down the agent's temple, but his expression never wavered. The mission continued. Elsewhere, a drone disguised as a child's toy dipped precariously when a gust of wind rattled the balcony it clung to. For 3 terrifying seconds, its camera feed went black. In Tel Aviv, a handler cursed under his breath. Then the image snapped back, steady, clear. Crisis averted, but nerves frayed. At 10:13 p.m., a delivery truck nearly blocked the operative's exit route. Had the driver parked only a meter further, the escape corridor would have collapsed entirely. Yet, by chance or fate, the man left enough space for the convoy to slip through. Every second became a coin toss with destiny, every glance a potential unraveling. The mission unfolded not like a gunfight, but like a tightrope walk across an abyss. One misstep, one careless moment, and the hunters would become the hunted. At 10:29 p.m., the strike arrived with surgical inevitability. Nasrallah, surrounded by his closest guards, settled into a modest safe-house apartment. The building appeared ordinary, its paint chipped, its stairwell dim. Yet within its walls, Mossad's invisible hand had already prepared the stage. A silent entry device slid open the lock, and 2 operatives breached the threshold in less than 3 seconds. No gunfire, no chaos, only shadows entering shadows. A paralyzing agent delivered through an aerosol disguised as room freshener, spread instantly. Bodyguards collapsed before hands reached their weapons. Nasrallah himself struggled only briefly, his breath stolen by precision rather than force. A micro-injection disguised as a medical pen delivered the coup de grace, a toxin engineered to mimic cardiac arrest. His final moments were not explosions or drama, but a quiet fading staged to appear natural. Operatives arranged the scene with chilling efficiency. A glass of water placed beside the bed, papers shuffled on the desk, lights dimmed to intimate rest. To the world outside, the Hezbollah leader would appear to have succumbed to an ordinary fate. To Mossad, it was the closing of a chapter written long before that night. The following morning, silence shattered within the Hezbollah compound. Bodyguards, returning from their staggered rotations, found the door ajar. They stepped inside, expecting to see their leader immersed in late-night papers or morning tea. Instead, they encountered an eerie stillness. Hassan Nasrallah lay slumped, head tilted slightly as though sleep had overtaken him mid-thought. His chest did not rise, his lips held no breath. Panic rippled instantly, radios crackled with urgent calls, voices breaking with disbelief. Senior commanders rushed to the scene, disbelief etched on their faces. No shattered glass, no sign of forced entry, no gunfire. It was as if death itself had passed invisibly through the room, leaving only its result. Whispers swept through the compound corridors. Could the unthinkable have happened? Had Israel finally succeeded where so many had failed? Or had fate alone intervened, robbing Hezbollah of its figurehead without the aid of enemy hands? The air grew thick with both grief and suspicion. By midday, word spread beyond Dahieh, racing across Beirut like lightning through dry sky. Shops shuttered, crowds gathered, rumors ignited. A single question burned everywhere, from mosques to marketplaces. How could Hassan Nasrallah die so quietly, so suddenly, and without warning? The body was swiftly moved under heavy guard to a secured medical facility in southern Beirut. Doctors chosen for loyalty rather than independence gathered around the examination table, their expressions grave. Every eye in the room understood the stakes. This was not merely a death, it was a potential assassination concealed as fate. Initial inspection revealed no wounds, no bruises, no obvious trauma. Heart failure was the first conclusion whispered aloud. Yet the absence of prior medical warning raised suspicion. Samples of blood, tissue, and fluids were collected with meticulous care. Some doctors argued for secrecy, fearing that evidence of poisoning would ignite immediate war. Others insisted the truth, however uncomfortable, must surface. Microscopic analysis revealed anomalies, traces of compounds inconsistent with natural cardiac arrest. The findings hinted at a sophisticated toxin engineered to vanish swiftly, leaving only faint chemical shadows. Instruments detected markers that traditional forensic kits could not explain. Debate raged quietly behind closed doors, while outside the hospital, Hezbollah commanders demanded immediate answers. The official report, drafted for public release, spoke only of sudden cardiac arrest. Yet inside Hezbollah's highest councils, whispers grew louder. Mossad's invisible hand had left a signature not of bullets or bombs, but of science, an assassination masked as inevitability. Hours after the announcement, Lebanese security services combed through the compound's surroundings, desperate for clarity. Banks of CCTV footage were reviewed frame by frame. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Cars passing, pedestrians wandering, hotel staff entering and exiting as expected. Then, anomalies surfaced. Faces repeated across different cameras, appearing in separate neighborhoods within implausible time frames. A man with a German passport was seen in a cafe at 7 p.m., yet his likeness appeared outside Nasrallah's safe house less than 15 minutes later. Interpol databases confirmed the suspicion. The passports belonged to real citizens of Germany, Canada, and Australia, but their owners were alive, continents away. Mossad's forgeries had been flawless on arrival, but digital forensics exposed the impossibility of their movements. Airlines submitted passenger logs under pressure. Several individuals who had checked into Beirut hotels vanished the morning after Nasrallah's death, leaving behind rooms stripped of personal effects, trash bins containing only sterilized wrappers, and bedsheets pressed as though never slept in. The Lebanese government bristled. Public statements accused foreign intelligence services of violating sovereignty. Hezbollah, however, spread word of a deeper betrayal. An international conspiracy involving Western intelligence, airlines, and embassies that had abetted the strike. Rumors swelled that even local collaborators were embedded within Beirut's hotels and airport staff. The scandal widened when European capitals acknowledged that citizens' passport identities had been stolen. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom summoned Israeli diplomats, demanding explanations cloaked in diplomatic theater. Mossad, as always, neither confirmed nor denied. But the repetition of familiar tradecraft, false passports, ghost identities, vanishing operatives, mirrored past operations too closely to ignore. What began as the quiet death of a single man now threatened to fracture alliances, inflame streets, and pull governments into the theater of espionage's most public scandal. The world reacted as though an earthquake had struck the Middle East. In Tehran, officials draped their rhetoric in fire, declaring Nasrallah a martyr and promising vengeance against Israel in ways unforeseen. Crowds surged into the streets, waving Hezbollah flags beside portraits of the fallen leader. State television replayed grainy footage of his past speeches, painting his death as both tragedy and prophecy. In Washington, the response was more cautious. Spokespersons expressed concern over regional stability, while carefully avoiding direct attribution. Behind closed doors, Intelligence committees demanded classified briefings, aware that confirmation of Mossad's hand would complicate delicate alliances. American diplomats in Beirut quietly tightened security, bracing for retaliation. European capitals, still reeling from the passport scandal, erupted with indignation. France expelled an Israeli attaché, Germany issued formal condemnation, and the United Kingdom launched parliamentary inquiries. Yet, beneath the outrage, quiet admiration lingered. Few denied the precision of the operation, even as they condemned its audacity. Within Lebanon, grief spiraled into chaos. Supporters flooded Dahieh, chanting vows of revenge. Rival factions whispered that Hezbollah, decapitated of its iconic figure, might fracture from within. The Lebanese government faced impossible pressure to appear sovereign, to appease Hezbollah, and to avoid provoking open war with Israel. Israel itself remained silent, offering neither admission nor denial. The silence was louder than words, a calculated refusal that kept the world guessing. In Tel Aviv, officials spoke only of a safer region. The message was clear. Deterrence had been restored through shadows, not declarations. Nasrallah's death became more than an assassination. It became a geopolitical earthquake, rattling alliances, fueling conspiracies, and reminding the world that the true battlefield of modern war was neither desert nor sky, but the hidden corridors of espionage. Behind the headlines and the shouting parliaments lay a quieter truth. Assassinations of this scale did not emerge from lone operatives or impulsive decisions. They were born in the hidden bureaucracy of intelligence, an empire of paperwork and silence. Within Mossad's headquarters, offices that looked bland as accounting firms concealed labyrinths of classified files. Each signature, each authorization, moved the gears of a machine designed to kill without leaving fingerprints. This phantom bureaucracy thrived on routine. Travel budgets masked under cultural exchange programs, equipment logged as agricultural research tools, flights disguised as humanitarian aid. Entire operations lived in spreadsheets that, if glimpsed, looked indistinguishable from routine government logistics. Yet those lines of data carried the weight of life and death. The agencies themselves resembled shadow empires. Power did not flow from elected officials, but from committees whose names never appeared in public record. Directors played chess with destinies, approving eliminations with the flick of a pen. The bureaucracy gave the illusion of order, but it was also insulation. Layers of deniability built so high that accountability dissolved into mist. In this world, assassinations were not aberrations but scheduled outcomes. For every operation that surfaced in the news, a dozen remained buried, their paper trails shredded, their agents reassigned. The phantom bureaucracy endured, silent and untouchable, writing history from the shadows while democracies debated in daylight. Beyond the bureaucrats and their paper trail stood the legions, units so secretive their names were whispered like myths. Kidon, Mossad's elite assassination wing, trained operatives to vanish into airports, slip through hotel lobbies, and strike before suspicion formed. To allies, they were surgical precision. To enemies, they were ghosts that left corpses but no footprints. Each member was sculpted over years, taught languages, disguises, poisons, electronics. Their dossiers read like legends. The woman who memorized entire city grids after one helicopter flyover, the man who could pick 30 locks in 30 minutes blindfolded. They were not soldiers in uniforms but archetypes, tricksters, hunters, shapeshifters. Within Hezbollah's narrative, these legions became demons, invaders without borders, shadows that infiltrated their most guarded sanctuaries. To Mossad, however, they were assets cataloged by codename, deployed like tools from a chest. To the outside world, they remained invisible, their existence confirmed only by the wreckage left behind. These units were not vast armies but small, precise needles threading chaos through the fabric of nations. When summoned, they stitched together operations that rewrote geopolitics, and once dismissed, they dissolved back into the fog, leaving only questions of how much power truly hid behind their masks. The strike on Nasrallah did not stand alone. It echoed through a lineage of operations, each a chilling chapter in Mossad's hidden playbook. In 1960, Adolf Eichmann was snatched from a Buenos Aires street and spirited to Israel, his abduction disguised beneath forged passports and midnight flights. The world gasped, Yet the message was eternal. No distance, no exile could shield the marked. In 1973, Operation Wrath of God unfolded across Europe, a campaign of vengeance after the Munich massacre. Mail bombs, silenced pistols, and sudden deaths in hotel hallways left Palestinian militants glancing nervously over their shoulders, wondering if the stranger behind them carried Tel Aviv's invisible mandate. Then came Dubai, 2010. Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh found dead in a luxury hotel suite, security cameras later revealing a parade of operatives disguised as tennis players and tourists. The scandal over forged passports mirrored Beirut's storm today, proving the tradecraft never truly aged. It simply evolved. Each mission shared the same cinematic rhythm: patient surveillance, sudden strike, whispered denials. Each left behind unresolved questions, fragments of evidence, and a world forced to grapple with the realization that assassination had become a bureaucratic art form. Nasrallah's death was but the newest verse in a song long sung in shadow. At the summit of this shadow pyramid sat the architects, leaders who never touched a lockpick or whispered into a radio. They approved deaths with signatures, orchestrating lives and endings from polished conference tables. These were not warriors but flawed gods, burdened with secrecy, insulated by layers of deniability. Each decision rippled outward, rewriting borders, toppling figures, and stoking vendettas that outlived them. They held no illusions of justice, only calculations of necessity. In their silence, the world learned a truth both chilling and immutable. Behind every curtain, power resides not in daylight, but in shadows. Nasrallah's funeral transformed Beirut into a city of mourning and fury. Processions wound through Dahieh with tens of thousands pressing shoulder to shoulder, black flags rippling like waves in a storm. Loudspeakers thundered verses, clerics wailed prayers, and portraits of the fallen leader loomed from rooftops, staring down like an unblinking judge. Hezbollah's commanders appeared grim but defiant, vowing vengeance as crowds cried for retribution. Coffin bearers, clad in black and green, carried his body through a sea of fists raised in solidarity. The air crackled with grief, yet also with the combustible potential of renewed war. Governments issued statements of caution, but on the ground, anger was uncontainable. Gunfire rang skyward in ceremonial defiance, while militants swore that Israel had crossed an irreversible threshold. Markets shuttered, embassies closed early, and foreign nationals rushed to airports sensing the storm ahead. The immediate impact was both symbolic and strategic. Hezbollah had lost its anchor, and Lebanon its most polarizing figure. His death united followers in grief, but also left them staring into a void of leadership, uncertain of who could embody his myth or wield his authority with equal force. In the months that followed, the shockwave of Nasrallah's death did not fade, it metastasized. Hezbollah's hierarchy scrambled to project strength, elevating deputies whose voices lacked his gravity. Factions whispered, rival clerics maneuvered, and cracks spread beneath the surface of unity. Without its singular orator and strategist, the movement felt suddenly mortal. Regionally, Iran redoubled its support, channeling funds and weapons to preserve Hezbollah's role as a front line against Israel. Yet even Tehran could not restore the aura of invincibility that had cloaked Nasrallah. Militants loyal to his legacy clashed with pragmatists eager to avoid reckless escalation, leaving the group torn between vengeance and survival. Israel, for its part, quietly celebrated. Defense officials claimed deterrence had been re-established, though they knew the void might birth leaders even more unpredictable. In Arab capitals, reactions diverged. Some privately welcomed the weakening of Hezbollah, while others feared that the assassination would ignite a spiral of reprisals. The long-term consequence was paradoxical, a vacuum filled not with silence but with louder uncertainty. One man's removal did not end the conflict, it reconfigured it. In place of a steady adversary, arose shifting sands, where alliances and vendettas reshaped the battlefield with every passing month. In the end, Hassan Nasrallah's death changed little in the grand scheme of geopolitics. Hezbollah endured, Israel remained vigilant, and the region's rivalries smoldered on. Yet his quiet elimination revealed a world few dare acknowledge, a world where assassinations are boardroom decisions, where borders dissolve under forged passports, and where silence itself becomes a weapon. History will record his passing as a turning point, but the deeper truth lies elsewhere. Behind every operation, unseen hands draw the map of power. And in those shadows, justice and vengeance blur until only the machinery of statecraft remains.